One of the problems, as you know from education in every country, is that it is dominated by what I would call a lot of slogans and buzzwords. And these don't vary from country to country. I mean, every country talks about the knowledge economy, the great opportunity, educating young people, skill development, excellence. And in this knowledge economy, you can't expect to get growth if you're not doing enough, both in the area of education and skill development and so on. And it would not surprise you that we're saying all the same things. The real issue is, I think, what are the difficult issues in what otherwise very often can be described as non-controversial motherhood statements, which are universally adhered to. Don't get me wrong, I'm not denigrating motherhood statements, and most motherhood statements, that's why they're called motherhood. I mean, they're good statements, they're very important statements, but for someone wanting to get to the nub of the matter, everybody agrees on those statements. The question really is, are we doing some of the difficult things that would actually move it forward? I think we're trying to, and that's what I want to give you a sense of. First, some very broad parameters. Government in India means central government and state governments. Most people, when they think of universities in India, and the fact that some of these universities have established a very high reputation for themselves, both in the country and actually also abroad, usually think of central government institutions, central universities. I mean, for example, anyone talking about India's technical education talks about the IITs. Now, there are some very good technical schools other than the IITs, but it's dominated by the IITs. So the first question that arises is, what is the relative importance of the central institutions versus state institutions? And here, 97% of all students at university are either in the private sector or in the state sector. Only 3% are really in the central government sector. That's a very good level of quality, and actually we need to improve that even further. But let's give you one very important point. If someone here is interested in collaborating, there are three types of institutions that can be used for collaboration. One is central universities, the other is state universities, some of which are good, many are not so good. And of course there's the private sector, again, some of which are good and some are not so good. So that's one big distinction that has to be made. What we've said in the plan, and I think that's government policy also, that we're really pushing in two different directions, both of which are valid. One is that the number of kids that go to university should be increased. And that's not necessarily directly connected with employable skills. I mean, there's a certain merit in having an entire generation, having a larger percentage of them go through what would in America be called a liberal arts education. That has some value. Of course, there's not much use if you don't produce the technical skills and the engineering skills and the medical skills and the professional skills. But that's maybe the easiest thing to do in some ways, but we also need to ensure that the composition of what people are being trained for changes quite a bit. Separate from university education, completely separate from it, is the whole business of skill development, where essentially people are trained for employable skills. So we have a set of programs aimed at strengthening the existing technical training institutions, which were hopelessly outmoded, but which are now slowly being changed around. How effective these changes are is an important issue. Our overall policy on education, I don't know if Palam Raju mentioned this, he may have, is kind of driven by what we call the 3 E's. Did he mention the 3 E's? He didn't, so let me elaborate on that. Because I think it's a conceptual kind of categorization. The three E's are really expansion, equity, and excellence. Expansion simply says, at the moment we have, numbers vary on this, but somewhere between 14 and 18% of the generation that could be in university is actually in university. And everybody feels this is too low, and that over a 20-year period or something, this should go up. Some people think it would be okay to take it up to about 25, and others say, no, we should go for 30. It's certainly true that in developed countries, the percentage has become very high. In developing countries, also rising. That is straight expansion. Now, we can expand the system with all its good and bad qualities simply by having more of each, and we are going to do that. There will be more private sector universities, there will be more central universities, there will be more state sector universities. So the expansion side of the operation is underway and is not actually going to create, if you check back, we'll be able to meet those targets, I'm pretty sure. Equity is a little more complicated because it's quite possible to expand top down. I mean, you got, 19% of the kids are in university. This is usually highly correlated with their position in the income level, and the upper income people tend to go to universities. So you can expand the thing by taking the next level of income. But that's not what we're calling equity. I mean, two reasons for that. One is the expansion can take place in the areas that are already developed. Whereas we want to see that expansion taking place in areas which currently don't have colleges. And actually, if you want to educate women, which you do want to educate, it's extremely important that the availability of university and college education is spread over the regions. I mean, for one reason or another, and one can imagine why, people don't want to send their daughters too far away from home. The young men can still be sort of carted off, even they prefer to be nearer home. But as far as daughters are concerned, if there aren't nearby colleges, the danger is they won't go to university. Not everybody, but certainly not at the 30% population. So you need institutions where there aren't any. And I think how to achieve that is a very major part of the equity challenge. The other side of the equity challenge, of course, is that even where there are educational institutions, are the poor denied access to them. And there, from a monetary point of view, is very easy because most of our university fees are very low. And we ought to have, we do have, and we will have even more scholarships. But scholarships don't solve the problem of regional spread. Remember, this is a very large country. So that, the equity side of education involves spreading it out into areas where it doesn't exist. And the last, of course, is excellence, which is actually the most difficult. Because even the spreading is simply a matter of money, though it is not so easy to recruit faculty if you start spreading the educational institution to areas that are not, from a geographical point of view, very attractive. I mean, people who are qualified to be good university teachers also have expectations not only about the sort of the general living conditions, that can be achieved by simply ensuring that they have it. But the cultural aspects, good schools for their children, and that cannot be assured. So I think the business of spreading and how you spread it requires a lot of innovative thinking. Excellence, of course, to some extent actually conflicts with the expansion side. I mean, it conflicts with expansion simply in the sense that you can't maintain certain standards if you're expanding rapidly. At least you can't do that very quickly. And it conflicts big time with the regional spread, because as you start wanting to get professors in parts of the country which are not otherwise well developed, what's going to happen is you're not going to get the best professors. You're not even going to get the good ones. So these are the challenges. It's not, I mean, we recognize them and we really need to address them. But I think we need to be clear that India's got to do all three of the three E's, and we're sure about the expansion, we're almost sure about the equity, but we're not so sure about the excellence. And really, it's there that creative thinking ought to be concentrated. Thank you.